And welcome to Salon Talks. I'm Dean Obeidallah, and today we have with us Congressman Ted Lieu, a Democrat from California's 33rd District. He serves on the House Judiciary Committee and the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Congressman Lieu, thanks for making time. It's great to see you again.
Thank you, Dean. Honored to be on your show.
Thank you. So there's so much to cover. So much has gone on in the last few days. Let's first of all, you were one of the first members of Congress to come out in favor of an impeachment inquiry of Donald Trump. Now I saw a little over 70 members of the Democratic caucus have joined you. What's going on behind the scenes that are making other Democrats in the caucus come out publicly saying, I am now also for an impeachment inquiry?
Thank you for that question, Dean. I've expressed my personal opinion to Speaker Pelosi. She's making the decision along with the caucus, and I respect that decision. In the meantime, we're doing additional hearings to bring out the facts of the Mueller report, and more facts have come out. Members are also seeing the unprecedented obstruction by the Trump administration. And it's not just on the Mueller report. It's on every line of inquiry on behalf of the American people. So, for example, we want to know, why is the Trump administration suing to eliminate health care coverage for people with pre-existing conditions? We can't get answers to that. We want to know, why did Wilbur Ross lie about the census? We can't get answers to that. So I think members are also seeing this obstruction by the administration as well, which, by the way, is also an impeachable offense.
Right, so the stonewalling is moving them. I'm glad because, you know, the base, you see polls like I do. There was a CNN poll a week and a half ago, 76% of Democrats support an impeachment inquiry. And I'm hoping at some point the leadership will follow the lead of the base and fellow members of the House like yourself that are out there pushing for this. It's clearly time, and it's not for a political reason, for a constitutional reason.
So it is a process, and I think it's important to have the facts continue to come out and have individual members of Congress come to their decisions. On the Judiciary Committee, we're sort of upfront and center, so we're seeing all this in real time. Lots of members of Congress who may be on different committees, this is not the first thing that they're paying attention to, but I think as they get more and more facts, then they're going to be coming out with the decisions as well.
And I saw that over a majority of Democrats on your committee, House Judiciary, now support an impeachment inquiry. So a big thing happened this week on the House Judiciary Committee. Hope Hicks, Donald Trump's former White House comms director, came and testified. But what was remarkable before the testimony, the day before, White House counsel sends a letter using the term that she is absolutely immune from being compelled to testify before Congress. Absolute immunity? Where do they get this from?
That concept has never been recognized by any courts. It doesn't exist. The administration is just making stuff up. It's basically pure BS. They're going to get destroyed in court. Now, one reason we did this is we wanted to put on the record how absurd absolute immunity is. And so, for example, we asked questions such as, where is her office located? And they objected to that. I finally asked a question just to point out how absurd this whole thing was. I asked her on her first day of work at the White House, was it a sunny day or a cloudy day, just to make the point.
Right.
So we're now taking this information, and not only are we going to win in court regarding her, we're also going to use this in our litigation to get Don McGahn to testify, because they're asserting the same absolute immunity. And this is very helpful to us, what Hope Hicks put on the record along with these objections in the Don McGahn litigation.
You were live tweeting during the conference saying, I'm watching obstruction of justice right before my eyes. And I saw your questions about, does the president ever come into your office when you're eating lunch? And they go, objection. How could you, why would be the base of this objection? Was it laughable at any moment? Were you fighting the laughter because this was so insane? Or were your jaws just dropping as you were watching the objection? Over 155 objections by counsel to the questions by the House Judiciary Committee.
So my intent was actually not to tweet about the closed door hearing, but when I saw how absurd the objections was, I thought it was important for me to point out that we were watching obstruction of justice in action. So I did live tweet out their objections. I never tweeted out anything about what Hope Hicks said. So I just want to make that clarification.
And now we actually have the entire transcript out so people can read it. So a lot of people ask, why are these hearings with Hope Hicks behind closed doors? Why aren't they on national TV so we can all see it?
Yeah, because Hope Hicks would not agree to a public hearing. So our choices were basically, we go to court to compel her testimony for a public hearing, or we do this, which is we get her in a closed door hearing, we get her to testify about her witnessing bad acts during the campaign. We get these objections on her tenure during the White House, and then we go to court and get her back on public hearing to talk about those issues. So regardless, we're going to have to go to court anyways. At least with this, we get some testimony from her, and we get to put on the record how absurd absolute immunity actually is.
And if there was actually a formal impeachment inquiry, which would start in your committee, the Judiciary Committee would run it, could they still, witnesses say, I don't want to testify in public? Or to have people understand a little bit more of an impeachment inquiry, would that mandate then the hearings be much more in the public view so all of America can watch it like they did with Watergate hearings?
The administration can still assert the same stupid claim of absolute immunity. We still have to go to court. We still have to litigate this in court. Doing an impeachment inquiry doesn't actually make it so that you don't have to go to court.
Okay. And so we all understand, what's the typical time frame now? I saw Chairman Nadler, the chairman of your committee, saying we're going to prepare to go to court against Hope Hicks. How long would it be before we might actually hear an answer? I know it's an estimate, but what do you think approximately?
So, as you know, we already won 2 court cases. We will be filing relatively soon the Don McGahn case to get him to testify in an open hearing publicly. And we expect to win on that as well. So we're trying to expedite the process. We want to make sure that if we go to court, we win. So we need to make sure we have the strongest legal brief, cross our T's and dot our I's. So we're making sure we have the strongest case before these courts. It's rather important that we vindicate these rights. So we don't want to, because we want to be quick, we miss something. So we're doing our due diligence.
And you mentioned earlier how the Trump administration is stonewalling on everything. There's lawsuit after lawsuit for tax returns, to economic, financial records, to things about health care. Have you ever seen an administration stonewall to this degree? I mean, it's like a wall they put up that you can't get anything, and they don't care. It seems like Trump actually believes, I'm not kidding or being hyperbolic, that he's above the law and above congressional oversight.
This amount of stonewalling is unprecedented in our country's history. And again, it's not just on a Mueller report. It's on virtually every line of inquiry that Congress is doing on behalf of the American people. And they're just making stuff up when they don't want to provide information. Again, there's no such thing as absolute immunity. The courts are going to rule for us. It's just going to take some time to get that ruling.
So another big issue, obviously, was Iran and what happened there. An unmanned drone of ours was shot down by the Iranians. The dispute if it was in Iranian airspace or not. Then Donald Trump, we find out, planned to do some type of airstrike against perhaps radar and other locations where missiles are being launched from. And then he tweets that 10 minutes before, he finds out, he asked the general, 150 people would be killed in these strikes, and he says no to the strikes. What's your reaction to all of this?
That the administration has no Iran strategy, that the president himself doesn't really know what to do. And in something as deadly serious as the use of military force, we can't be engaged in amateur hour. And we're watching an administration that doesn't really know how to respond. By the way, in the normal process of advising a president on military strikes and so on, he would have been told how many casualties likely would occur. So it's really quite unbelievable to me that he only finds out how many casualties might occur 10 minutes before the strike is about to happen. So I don't even really believe his own Twitter feed when he talks about that, unless he was simply not paying attention during his initial briefing that caused him to order the strike in the first place.
He could have been tweeting. I mean, who knows what's going on? Which on Fox News could have been on. But Congressman, I mean, you're a veteran. I would imagine one of the first questions any normal human being asks about a strike is, how many people are going to die in this strike? Can you give me a range? So not to ask that until the last 10 minutes before the strike, when the planes are in the air, as you're saying, it seems impossible to believe, frankly.
So let's just take a step back from this particular incident. Absolutely, you always want to know what potential casualties are, but let's take a step back. At this point, we don't even know what the administration's own goals are for Iran. And before you can even formulate any actions, you need to know what your desired end state is. And we have different members of administration saying different things. You basically have John Bolton, who's talked about regime change. You then have Secretary Pompeo, who has set out a list of 12 demands for Iran. Most of them are non-nuclear demands. And then you have the president, who has said that no, all he really wants is a stronger nuclear deal. So you can't have three different goals out there, which makes it very confusing, not just for the Iranians and our allies, but also for Congress and the American people. So we need, first of all, know what exactly are the administration's goals and how do their current actions help them achieve those goals.
And just earlier in the week or the last week, there were two tankers that were attacked in the Straits of Hormuz. And the Trump administration said very clearly, this is Iran's doing. And there's a question of, has the evidence been produced that shows that? Have you seen evidence as a member of Congress that fulfills your concerns that actually Iran was involved in the strikes on the two tankers?
So that's a great question. So for the tanker incident, I have seen the publicly released footage by U.S. Navy. It is pretty compelling. You've got an Iranian boat going to the tanker trying to remove what looks like one of the unexploded mines. But the question you raised points out a much larger problem, which is that our allies and a lot of American people no longer trust Donald Trump because of his over 10,000 lies he said in his years in office. In addition, when the president himself keeps attacking our own intelligence agencies, it then causes more distrust. And so we're in this very bad situation where there is a lack of credibility, a lack of trust in our commander-in-chief, and that is not a good thing.
No, it's not, because, as a progressive, I'm not a fan of Trump, to say the least, but on issues of national security, you should be able to believe the government. You should question, of course. Here, it has no credibility. This administration has no credibility. So they used to mock Obama and say, with Obama, our enemies don't fear us and our allies don't trust us. That was wrong. But with Trump, that seems to be actually accurate, what's going on.
Donald Trump himself actually said during his campaign that he essentially thinks that being unpredictable is a good thing. Maybe that's a good thing in domestic politics, but in foreign policy, that is really stupid. So let's just do a quick thought experiment here. How many people would have wanted John Kennedy to be unpredictable during the Cuban Missile Crisis? No one, right? And so what you want in foreign policy is clear, well-defined goals. You want the administration to explain what are U.S. interests, and you want the administration to explain what is the desired end state of where we want to go, and how do we get there using our current actions.
And this week we read that the administration briefed Congress that Al-Qaeda is involved in Iran, which at least is a questionable thing. I mean, Al-Qaeda is Sunni extremist. Iran, obviously, a Shia country. In Iran, in Iraq, you have members of Al-Qaeda killing Shias, saying they're apostates, they're not even Muslims. Is there evidence that you've seen any briefing that makes you comfortable that Al-Qaeda is involved actually in Iran? Or, because to me, it reminds me of Iraq and being told Saddam Hussein in 9/11 over and over and over until 70% of Americans thought Saddam Hussein was involved in 9/11, and he was not.
Based on public reporting, it appears that really there is no evidence that Iran is somehow supporting Al-Qaeda. And you pointed out they're completely different camps that actually would more likely fight each other.
It's remarkable to see what's going on. So this week, though, speaking about military action, you championed the bill that got a vote in the House on requiring congressional approval for any more sales of weaponry to Saudi Arabia and the UAE. Why did you do this? Why is this important?
Thank you for asking. This is an important issue because what the administration did is basically they declared the emergency to bypass Congress, which has always been involved in arms sales. And they said for these 22 arms sales to Saudi Arabia and UAE, we're going to bypass you by saying there is somehow this emergency that allows us to sell these arms without congressional review. There is no such emergency. And how do we know that? First of all, for the overwhelming majority of these arms, most of them aren't even ready to be sold. They aren't even made. And for some of them, not only would it take months, it could take over a year for them to even get to Saudi Arabia. Second, just the definition of some of these arms. One of them is for Saudi Arabia to create products for other end users. I don't see how that is any sort of emergency that allows Saudi Arabia to do that. It also outsources jobs to Saudi Arabia. It basically says Saudi Arabia can now start producing these precision-guided munitions. So this is really just an end run around Congress. I'm very pleased that just a few days ago, I got an amendment passed that would shut down these 22 arms sales. It was a bipartisan vote, and hopefully we'll see if the Senate will do the same thing.
Well, I hope the Senate will do something. It's remarkable, Mitch McConnell, who prides himself on being the grim reaper of good legislation. So, we're in the heat of the 2020 campaign. So much so far really has been on domestic policy concerns. Do you think what's going on in Iran now ends up being, we see some of the discussion in the debate, and the 2020 candidates will now be called on to talk about foreign policy?
It could, depending on whether the situation escalates or de-escalates in Iran, but does point out that this is another broken promise by Donald Trump. He campaigned on getting us out of these endless wars. He has not done that. We've been in Afghanistan for 18 years. We're still there. He tried to get us out of Syria. He failed to do that. We still have troops in Syria. And now it looks like he's actually adding additional troops to deal with what Iran is doing. So this does highlight that Trump has failed in foreign policy.
I can only imagine what's going on behind the scenes when, like you mentioned, John Bolton, who called for regime change a long time ago, and you got Pompeo out there as well, who's far right on many issues. And then this bizarre alliance, you've got the Saudis who want things there, and Israel, Netanyahu wanting things. I fear a drumbeat to war, and oddly, you have to look to Trump almost to be the backstop to not going to a reckless war in Iran. And I can't trust him at all. So I don't know where we're going. It feels like 2003 all over again and the drumbeat to the Iraq war.
So the difference is that the overwhelming majority of Congress, as well as American people, don't trust the president when it comes to these issues. That wasn't quite the same back in 2003. So I think you do have that difference. And we in Congress on the Foreign Affairs Committee, we've held hearings previously on Iran. We're going to do more. We're going to hold the administration's feet to the fire and have them explain to the American people what their strategy actually is, because the American people and Congress don't really know that right now.
Right. And I think we all learned a lesson from the Iraq war. And even Trump attacked the Iraq war. So let's see what happens. So let's talk about 2020 a little bit here for the last few minutes, Congressman. You were early supporter of Senator Kamala Harris. Why did you get involved quickly and endorse her?
I think Kamala Harris would be a fantastic president. I've known her for many years. We worked on a lot of issues together, including criminal justice reform and also specifically on bail reform. And I think she is the leader we need that can unite the American people. And I'm very, very excited about her candidacy.
I keep waiting for her and a few others to break out of the pack, to be honest. I think she's remarkable and very impressive in so many ways. And there are others as well that are sort of stuck in this mid-level to low level in the polls. Do you think there's a chance at the debates coming up that Senator Harris, who you've endorsed, shines and can actually break out of the pack a little more?
I think she could. As the American people have seen, she's a great public speaker. During the committee hearings, she is excellent at asking questions. And she, I think, is very eloquent in her vision and her statements. So I look forward to these debates.
So do I. It's exciting. It's like, I'm a sports fan. I'm a Giants fan, but this is like the Giants in the Super Bowl to watch these debates coming up. I'm looking forward to watching it. I do have a fear, though, of the Democrats beginning to cannibalize each other. They have to be, they vet each other. They got to call each other out on policy. But I've seen some comments by surrogates and from candidates and even rank and file people that concern me that we are ready to destroy each other in support of a candidate. Do you share those concerns? Any suggestions what we can do to remember that we are all Democrats and our goal is defeating Donald Trump on November 3rd, 2020, not destroying ourselves?
Right. The number one goal is to remove Donald Trump next November of 2020. We also need to make sure that we don't, as you said, attack each other. I actually think it's better to have a lot of candidates, because one of the things that happened in 2016 is when it just basically was Hillary and Bernie, the two camps really went after each other. When you have this many candidates, there'll be some folks who attack, but most of the time, they're just trying to get their own vision out to American people. So you're actually seeing comparatively less attacks because we do have so many candidates.
And that's a great point. I interviewed the Democratic state chair in New Hampshire, who's been around for years, who said that exact thing. He goes, in years when there were a lot of Democrats, there wasn't this emotional commitment to just one candidate or the other, and it was harder to reunite afterwards, as opposed to Hillary Bernie in 2016, where that happened and was harder to unite our party. So I'm hopeful that, an issue that you're a co-sponsor of, Medicare for All, is a big issue that Senator Harris and others have signed on for. Do you think that is that the premier issue for Democrats in 2020 from your point of view, addressing health care and the differences between us and Trump?
Healthcare is absolutely the premier issue. I am a supporter of Medicare for all. I also think we need to change that term because what polling shows is that a number of senior citizens believe that this is going to make Medicare worse for them, that by expanding additional people who can be involved in Medicare, that they're going to start getting less benefits. So we just have to change this term. We shouldn't be calling it Medicare for all. We can call it universal health care. You can call it single payer, but we should not be using that term.
And it's something we need in this country. So last thing, we're right in the beginning of the heat of the 2020 campaign. I know you can't predict the future. I wish you could, because I've asked you about stocks I should buy and who's going to win the World Series. But more importantly, do you think that we're going to beat Donald Trump come November 3rd, 2020?
Absolutely. And what you see right now is you see the Trump administration fighting the wrong war. So what they're fighting is what happened in 2016. If you watch his campaign launch recently, it was exactly the same as 2016, basically on immigration, on building the wall. If you look at what actually happened, is there was a different war that happened in 2018, and Democrats won. And it appears that the Trump administration is simply ignoring that because in 2018, the Republicans and Trump ran again on immigration, on these big caravans on the wall. Democrats ran on healthcare, and we crushed them. And so that's what's going to happen, I think, in 2020. Democrats have learned, the Republicans have not.
And to your point about Trump's kickoff, it seems like he's ready to take on Hillary Clinton. He talked about her email. They actually cheered "Lock her up" at the rally. It was surreal to watch that, but he is stuck there. And his vision is one, I think, looking back, while Democrats, we have a vision looking forward. So I hope that's our key to victory. Congressman, thanks very much for being on Salon Talks with us. I really appreciate it, and always look forward to you on cable news. You do a fabulous job there, and on Twitter. Everyone should follow Congressman Lieu. He's fabulous on Twitter. So thanks, Congressman. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Dean.